I've wanted to visit Tofino and Pacific Rim National Park for over a decade, but I never could have imagined myself biking 27 kilometers to a 9 a.m. surf lesson. Until last night. So, how did I end up here? Last night, my rental car broke down in a parking lot in the middle of nowhere. The details of that are in my last video. The taxi service that operates between Tofino and Ucluelet doesn't open until 10 a.m. And my surf lesson was at Cox Bay Beach, a half-hour drive away, at 9 a.m. the next morning. Luckily for me, the overnight parking lot where I slept in the back of the car had an e-bike rental shop. They were closed by the time I pulled in, so I called them after hours. Miraculously, they picked up, and after I explained my plight, they agreed to come down at 7 a.m. the following morning to rent me an e-bike for the day. And so, I biked for over an hour through the gorgeous coastal temperate rainforest of Pacific Rim National Park, an activity I never would have come up with on my own, but would highly recommend, especially so early in the day, as I didn't come across another person on the path and it was really magical. I had enough time to spare and couldn't help myself, so I stopped on the way to admire Long Beach. The fog was lifting and there were a few early risers already out on the water with their surfboards. Speaking of which, I actually surprised myself by deciding to take this surf lesson. I knew that Tofino has been named the surfing capital of Canada, and I figured, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. I get so much value out of immersing myself in a place as much as possible when I travel. In our day-to-day lives, we are usually doing and thinking the same things over and over again, so I like to shake things up by trying new things. It was so much fun and both challenging and relaxing at the same time. The small group meant that I was able to get to know my fellow students, who all happened to be kind, interesting, and adventurous women. After 3 hours of getting thrown around in the water, I was back on the bike with very clean sinuses, and rode the last few kilometers into Tofino. At the recommendation of our surf instructor, I went to the Tofino Brewing Company with a couple of the ladies from the lesson. And then I spent the rest of the afternoon biking and strolling through town before heading to the beach. The term main character energy is being thrown around a lot online. Apparently the term has been around for years, but I just recently started hearing about it a lot this past year. However, the first time I heard the general sentiment was actually in the 2006 film The Holiday, which is one of my favorites.
Iris, in the movies we have leading ladies and we have the best friend. You, I can tell, are a leading lady, but for some reason you're behaving like the best friend.
You're so right. You're supposed to be the leading lady of your own life, for God's sake.
The way I've heard main character energy described is when someone puts themselves first and takes control of their narrative in a self-affirming way to live life to its fullest. In movies, the main character is generally the person that you're following and the person that you're rooting for. The idea is that you should look at yourself as the main character in your life and root for yourself. This, of course, is not to be confused with thinking you're the main character in everyone's story. And I was thinking a lot about the sentiment behind it on this trip, and about how I cultivate main character energy when it feels like everything is going wrong. Because I think when it feels like everything is falling apart is when this main character energy can actually be the most useful. Even in the movies, characters have what is often called a dark night of the soul, which is a crisis of faith, or an all is lost moment, usually following a series of things going wrong. It's in moments like this when it feels the most necessary to remind yourself that you are the protagonist in and the writer of your own story. Now, that doesn't mean that everything that happens to you is within your control, but how you respond to it is. Seizing life's little moments so they work out to your advantage is what being a main character is all about. If I hadn't been constantly focused on troubleshooting, trying everything I could think of, and making the most of the trip under the circumstances, I would have without a doubt missed my surf lesson that morning and had a completely different experience. This main character energy also steers us away from trying to fit into someone else's viewpoint of what we should or shouldn't do, instead focusing on what our own needs and wants are. And remember, it's okay not to know what you want to do with your life. It's a blessing that you haven't fully internalized someone else's idea of what you should do and are searching for your own path. The hero's journey is a timeless story structure which follows a protagonist on an unforeseen quest, where they face challenges, gain insights, and ultimately return home transformed. And I find it very interesting that people have actually been relating the hero's journey to their own lives, but it makes sense. Story is a way we give structure and meaning to our own experiences. One of the stages of the hero's journey is the call to adventure, which is followed by the main character refusing this call to adventure. But in the end, the character either chooses the journey or is thrown into it in some way. Otherwise, everything would stay the same, and there would be no adventure. We need to do the same thing in our own lives. We need to choose the adventure and say yes to the quest that is going to help transform us into the person we want to be, whether that's a physical, external adventure or an internal one. Alyssa Bean said in one of her YouTube videos that perhaps the person we want to be is in fact our true self. Tonquin Beach is a small, secluded beach, and although it was a busy long weekend, it was easy to find a private spot to lay down a towel and soak up the late summer sunshine. I had fish tacos for dinner at the original Tofino food truck, which was as busy and as delicious as everyone said it would be. I was hoping to catch one of Tofino's famous gorgeous sunsets at Chesterman Beach, but by the evening, it became too overcast to see the sun sink below the horizon. If there is no golden hour, I can still enjoy blue hour reflecting off the wet sand. I can enjoy dusk, and I can still listen to the crashing of the waves as the tide comes in. Everything worthwhile in this life involves risk and patience, not always in equal measure. Whether it's moving away from home, putting your heart on the line, starting a new job, starting a family, getting on a plane, or having a difficult conversation. And it's scary to take even a calculated risk. My life has been a constant process of befriending the unknown, and I've come to the conclusion that I have nothing to lose but the illusion of stability and control, and everything to gain. There really are no guarantees in this life. I speak more about giving up the illusion of control in my video Backpacking in Italy Part 1. On Tuesday, the long weekend was over, but it was the afternoon by the time the car rental company made arrangements for a tow truck to drive to Ucluelet from down south to take us and the car back to Victoria. So, in the end, we had an entire day to kill in Ucluelet, which would have been a breeze with either a vehicle or better weather. But it was pouring rain all day, and most businesses seemed to either be closed all day or close early. We were able to go to Canada's first catch-and-release aquarium to see and learn about some of the local marine life, which was very cool. We stayed until the aquarium closed, then looked for another place to stay dry. The tow truck driver arrived at 8 p.m. and we were able to start the 5-hour drive back at 9 p.m. And just like that, the Tofino, Ucluelet, and Pacific Rim National Park portion of the trip was over. The car trouble and bad weather meant that I didn't get to do a lot of the things I had planned to. 3 days ago, I never would have imagined that I'd be getting a ride back to Victoria in a tow truck. Life is unpredictable like that. Sometimes it creates the most wonderful serendipitous moments. Other times, as Robert Burns wrote almost 40 years ago, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. We finally made it back to Victoria at 2 a.m., not a moment too soon, because tomorrow morning I'm going whale watching for the first time. I'll take you with me in my next video. Life really is a big adventure. Thank you for joining me on mine, and I'll see you next week.